6 o'clock, I am calling this meeting to order. Let's please rise for the pledge. Lloyd, would you lead us today?
Yes, ma'am.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and welcome, everybody. I hope you all had a chance to read the minutes. Gosh, we got some empty chairs here tonight. Are there any corrections, changes, concerns? Somebody want to make a motion?
I move or approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Will. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. My update for today, we've been having a lot of discussions lately, and we will continue today about a lot of new issues. And I am very appreciative that we've had the chance to have these dialogues, and a lot of them have been brought forward by members of our community. So it is really nice that the voices of our community are leading to our discussions and to make some updates to things, some changes. What I wanted to point out is that we get easily sidetracked by a lot of topics, and I really would like to see us focus on student achievement this year. That's our job. That's the ultimate goal, is student achievement. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. I want us to celebrate the student achievement when we find things that, that we can celebrate. Bring them forward. I love hearing all the stories about things that are happening. I got to give a talk for the National Honor Society here, and it was really cool to listen to some of the students and see what was going on. It's been a lot of years since I went to the National Honor Society, and so it was really very refreshing to see that. The Daily Interlake has been doing a series on students. The latest one was Melody Noble, who is in the Navy, a graduate of Glacier. And it was just really cool to read her story. And I think we need to celebrate that kind of student achievement. Our energy should be devoted to student achievement. And I know I have talked with Micah and Matt, and maybe Pete's been listening, I don't know, about I would like to hear updates more on the student achievement. And I know OPI has some changes that are coming down to the local areas on assessments, more formative than summative, which means periodically testing throughout the school year to be informative for teachers. What are we missing out on? What can we improve on? And I think that's a really good change. And I like to see that we're participating in that rather than just one big test at the end. I would rather that we are able to make good use of it. Let's see. I mean, that will ultimately, if we, keep track, keep update on the student achievement, and I don't mean grades, I don't mean scores. That's part of the conversation. What are we going to look at for the assessments? But are our policies working? I mean, in the back of our mind or the front of our mind, whenever we make a decision, we should be thinking, how does this affect student achievement? So that's my my spiel for today, and I really hope we can, take that focus and run with it. Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, next are our student reports. No report from Kalispell Middle School. Flathead, we've got Ivy, who was at the National Honor Society, I will tell you that. So, president of National Honor Society, right, Ivy? Okay.
Okay, so yes, I'm Ivy. I'm senior class president. I think the last place we left off was when we were approaching homecoming week. So the dress-up days, we had a lot of participation. Yearbook got a lot of really good pictures. The costumes were pretty creative. It was really fun. And then we had our assembly, which was lots of school spirit, and we did sibling relay games. So we had probably about 6 pairs of siblings doing the relay races, and we had like balloon popping, a 3-legged race, and then there were frozen t-shirts that they had to like smack against the ground and put on. So that was pretty fun, and that was after we did like homecoming royalty and all of that fun stuff. And then there was a dance-off between all of the teachers and a group of students, and the teachers definitely won. Yes, it was very, very true. And then the dance, before we had the parade, there were 23 different student groups that participated and had floats, which was really good to see. Thank you, Mr. Hill, for driving in the parade.
My pleasure.
And then the dance, our theme was like neon rave, and a lot of students really got into that. They all brought like glow sticks and matched the theme, and we had 900 students attend. So it was very crowded, but it was still very, very fun. Yes, and then as Sue said, we had the National Honor Society induction, and we had 42 students that were inducted. And Mrs. Sue Corrigan, the board chair, was the speaker. So we have a thank you card for you. So thank you for doing that. Yes. I'm president of National Honor Society, so I sort of had to lead the show, but it's pretty fun. We light candles and they get pins and little certificates. And then we recently had the college fair. So lots of college stuff going on with like applications and different stuff like that. We had 70 vendors at the college fair, college, military, and then employment, and 10 area high schools attended, which was 834 students. I didn't go this year, but I went last year, and that was really helpful to like see the different colleges and get the brochures. So I do think that's very beneficial for our students here, that maybe if college wasn't in their future, like that sort of helps them guide, or that helps guide them. And yeah, we're doing lots of college stuff in class. In my English class, we're writing our application essays, which has been super helpful because when I was writing mine in the summer, that was super stressful because I didn't quite know what I should write about or how long it should be, and my teacher was really helpful with that. I'm in the process of applying right now to a couple schools, but hopefully University of Boulder in Colorado, so to study social sciences. So yeah, we're still like writing our essays and everything, but hopefully it will get less stressful later on in the year. And then one more thing, we had YAC helped out at the Special Olympics, which was just in the 2 gyms, and we had about 70 student volunteers, I think, and it was really awesome to see everyone getting involved. We had the basketball team's ref, both the girls and the boys, and we made posters, and there were tons of students cheering them on. I think that was a really great event, and I hope that we continue doing that for a long time. So yeah, any questions?
So when you said the college that's at a fair and the other schools attended, were those Nevada County schools, or how far? Don't know, sorry.
Like the high schoolers that came to the schools, or
Yes, the high schoolers.
I think Glacier came, right? Okay, yeah.
Any other questions for Ivy? Thank you, Ivy.
Thanks, Ivy.
Thank you, guys.
I want you guys to know I shared my gyroscope philosophy with the National Honor Society, too. Okay. Building update.
Mac.
Oh, Glacier, sorry. Oh, that was bad. So we've got Mac Atkins.
Hello, my name is Mac Atkins. I'm the student body president over at Glacier High School, and I just wanted to give you guys an update about what's going on up on the north side of town. So first of all, homecoming. Obviously, that's like royalty and stuff, and we had really good turnout for that, and our dance was awesome. We had the most people we've ever had attend at the dance, somewhere in the ballpark of 1,050 people were packed into the Glacier Commons. It was a lot of fun, a lot of energy. It was a really good time. But as Ivy kind of touched on before, homecoming is a lot more than just the dance and just the football game. Those went great too, but it's that whole week. It's this student spirit kind of thing. It's just a good way to kick off the school year. And that went really well up at Glacier. We had 5 dress-up days. Monday was Adam Sandler Day, which you guys might not really know what that means, but for my age, that's a very clear thing. It's like big, flowy t-shirts and big basketball shorts and stuff like that. And that had great participation. It was a great first day one, relatively easy to do, but kind of got people hyped up about the week. And then we had Barbecue Dad versus Soccer Mom Day on Tuesday, which had a lot of positive feedback too. And then on Wednesday, we had Color Wars because we had an assembly that day. So freshmen were gray, sophomores were white, juniors were blue, and juniors were green, and seniors were blue. And the reason we did that on Wednesday is because we had an assembly, so when everybody's in the gym, there's like a big wall of gray, a big wall of white, and a big wall of green and blue, and it was really awesome. And that assembly went great. We had a lot of fun games. We did I don't really know how to describe it, but there were folding tables that we had somebody on top of, and then they were rolling along people from their grade, and there was a 4 from each grade, and then a staff one too. And the staff kind of cheated, but I guess they won. But it was a lot of fun and really great participation and stuff with that. Thursday, we had Dress Like an Activity You Aren't In, which had a lot of support too. A lot of people showed up as cross-country runners. But it was a good day. And then Friday, it was just like school spirit, Glacier High gear, that kind of stuff. And so homecoming went great. Like I said, highest attendance we've ever had at the dance. And then kind of more just generally at Glacier, we've had a really good fall start to the year. Somewhere in the ballpark of 400 different students involved in an activity at Glacier, not counting theater, speech, and music, which are huge at Glacier too. So that means we have a lot of our student body participating in different activities. And speaking of student body, we are the biggest we've ever been, over 1,400 kids. And luckily, Glacier was built pretty future forward, so it hasn't felt packed yet, but we are the biggest we've ever been, and I think we were handling that pretty well. Also on fall activities, our golf team just got second at state, which we're really proud of. 2 years in a row, we've gotten second with pretty different teams, so we're pretty proud of that we were able to lose a lot of people, a lot of seniors last year, and then replicate the success. We also had a second place finisher, Tyler Avery. He's placed top 10 at state all 4 years now, so definitely somebody we're pretty proud of. And then our flag football team just won the inaugural season in the state championship, so another thing we were really proud of. Great success there. We had somewhere around 40 girls go out for that team in the first season, which was really awesome because I know there were some questions about how many would actually go out. So we were really proud of that. And then cross country, which I'm a part of, I don't know if you can tell by my immense bulk. Our last regular season meet is tomorrow, up at Rebecca Farms, so pretty excited about that. And then we have the state meet on the 22nd, so I believe that's over MEA days, not 100% sure on that. So really looking forward to that. We should have pretty good teams this year, so will Flathead too, they're pretty competitive. And then obviously, as you guys probably know, our football team's looking great, really proud of them. A lot of fun in the student sections, but keeping it also good, which is always kind of a question mark, I know, but yeah, that's just how Glacier's going. A lot of participation, a lot of really good things happening. We're pretty proud of how our activities are going. We're pretty proud of how many people are participating, all that good stuff. So, any questions?
Good job.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, Matt.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there. Question for you, what are your plans next year? You thought yet?
I'm not sure. Either I'm going to UM or MSU, or I'm looking at a couple out of state, but I'm not really sure yet. So excuse me, I do have to get to play practice now.
Cool.
Get going.
Perform well. Okay, always nice to hear what's going on in the schools. So now we have the building update, Kalispell Middle School. We have Annie Gustafson and Ashley Scar, did I say that? Scare, thank you. Okay, and Trig.
Hey, so just wanted to get a quick, I know these ladies are gonna get into some really cool stuff. Just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview. Really feel like we've gotten off to a good start. Last year, probably you read, you just kind of read papers or read the news. It was kind of a tough year, student behavior-wise, and just a lot of weird stuff going on. This year, just feel like we're off to a great start. Really, and we're really focused on, hey, how do we do school, working with our kids, just kind of what we need from you, how to respond to adults, a lot of behavior stuff, focusing on our guidelines, be respectful, be responsible, be safe. But I think it's really helping us in terms of just getting off to a great start. Last year, we really started diving into transformational learning, because Matt made us. But it was good, so we had a lot of really cool discussions last year, within our teachers, and staff meetings and stuff. And we're now gonna try, we actually have not even had a chance to start getting into that, partly because we're kind of working on, let's get off to a good start, really we're checking out our universals and our guidelines and get school going in a positive direction first. But part of transformational learning to us is, being relevant, being meaningful, trying to bring in outside things, outside activities, outside experiences. And these two ladies, we do have a lot of teachers that really do a good job of collaborating. Sometimes it's math and science, in this case it's ELA and science, sometimes it's social studies and ELA. We're trying to work on getting teams even working on big collaborative projects, and then, kind of incorporating that with some sort of outside, meaningful experience. But these ladies did a great job with it last year, and I'm gonna let them take over and make us look really good.
Okay, so, how do we click through this? Can we get the clicker?
Matt.
He is your clicker.
Do that?
Just give him the sign.
Okay, so, in case you're not familiar, biomimicry, do I need to use this?
For online, for online, for people who are online.
Oh, okay. So in case you're not familiar, biomimicry is innovation inspired by nature. Mother Nature has been evolving on this planet for 3.8 billion years, and it has the most efficient ways to function, to process. And when you take that and you apply it to engineering design, then you have created something that's more efficient, which saves energy, which saves fuel, which saves money, which saves the planet. So one example that I like to use with the students is the Kingfisher and the bullet train. The bullet train is one of the fastest trains on the planet. And in the 1990s, the engineers had to come up with a way to make this train quieter, because as it was moving through tunnels, it was building up this pressure, and as it exited the tunnel, there would be this sonic boom. And one of the engineers on the project was a birder, and he noticed how the Kingfisher bird can go from air to water, two totally different mediums, without making a splash. So he applied this to the train, and the train became faster, which made it more efficient, they saved money, and it made the train a lot quieter. What these students get to do with this project is they get to learn the science and engineering process by actually doing the science and engineering process. So it doesn't matter if you're in middle school biology or you're in high school physics, the next generation science standards all have this science and engineering process tied to the standard. And in my opinion, this is kind of the more important piece in the science classroom, because today students they're growing up with computers in their pockets. They can Google just about everything, but they cannot Google the answer to this. So as a science teacher, this is really cool because we're not doing experiments that we've done thousands of times. We are actually doing real science.
All right, perfect. So the students would then design their model, and then from there, they had to figure out what supplies and materials they needed in order to create this model. So they actually had to go through and fill out a budget plan, just as you see up here, which is not something that they are familiar with. And in fact, we learned that money, they don't seem to understand quite well, especially when you say you have $20 to spend and that's it. And I think they learned why parents get upset with last-minute projects with supplies and materials. But a lot of them realized, oh, we could reuse this material at home, or, oh, we could reuse this here at the school. So we did try to encourage them to find things around the school and at home. But then we also introduced them to the 3D printer, which was an amazing experience altogether. A lot of them are actually not familiar with 3D printing, so not only were they teaching themselves how to use it, they were teaching each other, and they were even teaching us, which was really cool to see. And they would use programs like Tinkercad and Thingiverse, and they were just realizing all of these things that you can actually 3D print and utilize when creating your model.
Okay, so they begin by defining a problem. So we spent a little time in the classroom talking about problems in our local community here in the Flathead. We talked about problems across the state of Montana. We talked about problems here in the United States and then globally. And ultimately, these kids got to pick the problem that they were interested in. And then they had to ask nature, who already solves this problem? Who does this best? And from there, they came up with their biological design solution. So the next part was building a model. So I have to say that this was the hardest part of the project. You know, if you looked across the typical classroom in the United States in 7th grade biology, these kids are building models of cells. And they can get on Google and they can say, okay, how do I build a model of a cell? They can open their textbook and copy the model of the cell. They cannot do that with this project. This is an original design, so it's incredibly hard to ask students to come up with a design solution and then actually build a model. So this is really cool. And then not only that, but they had to make, they're not making this like replica of their design, they're making an actual piece that they can test. So back to our bullet train example, those engineers didn't build an entire train and then test their model. They actually built these different shaped bullets and then shot them through these pipes to measure the air resistance. And so that's what they had to do. They had to think outside the box, and they had to come up with, okay, what part of the model can I actually build and test? So after that, they tested their model. Did it work? Did it not work? They collected data. And then one of the most important parts of the science process, no matter what discipline you're in, is communication. You can have good science, but if you can't communicate it to the world, what good is it? So this is where Ashley's expertise come in.
All right, so in ELA, this is where they focused on creating a professional portfolio. Now, they were panicking because at this point, they probably had like 15 pages worth of information, and it's, what do we do with all this? So they did all this research, now we need to organize it. And so this is where they were working on their claims, their evidence, and analyses, and we then had them create a Google site where then they organized all their thoughts and ideas, having it all laid out for them. And so here you can see on the site, they would have like their project overview, the problem, the biological model, the design solution, investigation, video pitch, and then quick facts as well as their references. And it's a lot of work for these kids. It's not definitely something you would see at the middle school level, so definitely challenging them. And I do know for a fact a lot of them, once they put it all together, they said, wow, I did all that. That is a lot of info that I just put together, and we did all this, as a group. And so it was really cool for them to visually see all their hard work put into one place. So then they had to create a video, and it was a 3-minute video, which was not easy because just like any middle schooler, they want to present everything about this project because they're so into it and excited. So how we approached it was this idea of if you're going to sit down with Elon Musk, you need to pitch him your idea, right? You need to sell it to him. And so you need to focus on what's truly important to sell your model, to sell your design, to make him believe that it could actually work and make a difference.
Okay, and the funnest part of this project, how I introduce it is, we don't care about your grade in this class. This is just practice for your future. So this is part of a national contest where these kids can compete at the middle school level, the high school level, and then on the college level. And on the college level, the prize money for this is $100,000. And I tell them that's $100,000 that you can go out and invest in your new idea. Because if you are winning this on the college level, you're going to have companies calling you up and saying, come work for me. So this gets them really excited that they're not just doing something for a grade, they're doing something for their future. And last year, we got to enter 5 projects, which was 19 students.
And then we found out, and we were shocked. I think we were almost in tears in this moment when we got the email, but we did have a group that took second place, and this is not second place in any type of contest. This was a national contest that they took second place in, which was a really big deal. And of course, we shared this information with them. They're like, cool, awesome. And it's like, no guys, this was nationally that you took second place, and getting them to understand how huge that is. And that's a hard, achievement to do. And I do know specifically with those group of boys that took second place, it impacted them in a very positive way and made them realize that they could do this as a possible career, which was really awesome to see. So we are planning to take this project even further this year. We are wanting to actually collaborate with math. And so basically once they have their design created, we want them to test it and collect all this data, which then finding a way to organize that information so they can show their results is one of our goals. We also would like to take these students on a field trip to applied materials where they can speak with some actual engineers and present their designs to them and show them how it works and kind of get this feedback from them because this is one of the standards on the rubric for this project, and just kind of seeing if they can change anything, make anything better, or just kind of tweak some things here and there.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned, but we got the money to buy that 3D printer from the KEF grant, and then Applied Materials has offered to sponsor the project this year, so great. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Question, how much was the original KEF grant that you got?
It was about $1,900.
other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
I love your comment, this is practice for your future.
Yeah.
Had to write that one down. Okay. At this time, the board will allow 15 minutes for comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that is not on the agenda. The chairman of the board, me, will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time, or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. Public comment will also be allowed near the conclusion of the meeting for those wishing to give public comment, but were unable to do so at the beginning of the meeting. So is there any public comment at this time? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Reynolds Cameron. I would like to address the members of the Board of Trustees, and I've been in conversation with Rebecca and Micah regarding the issue. And I believe one other of you a while back in a cell phone call. My niece, who I'm the legal guardian of, is in Burlingame, near San Francisco, living with her her grandparents, my parents-in-law. And we would love her to come to Kalispell, live with us, but because of the system in the United States, she cannot do so unless she becomes an illegal alien, or documented immigrant. If she was a migrant, whatever, then she could be here, but there's no way for her to legally live with us until we adopt her. We can't adopt her until she's been living with us for 12 months, which we have lived with her in Norway. My wife and I came from Norway. We had her when she was younger, but anyway, I'm just respectfully asking you to I'm trying to disabuse you of the notion that the F1 visa is but one of many ways that she could study here at the Flathead High School with the IB program. She is related to us, and so therefore is ineligible for the J1 visa, which is exchange program for coming to the United States, but you cannot by federal law, you cannot stay with a relative on the J1 program. The F1 program allows relatives to invite their students to America to study for up to 12 months. And that's what we were hoping. The Helena and the Great Falls school districts are authorized under the SEVP Student Exchange Visitor Program with Department of ICE. And I understand that that's a burden that has not been needed here in Kalispell. But if for our family or for any other families, or even if that could be approved, I understand it'd be an administrative burden. I'm willing to donate to the school any amount that it would cost to cover those expenses. And students on an F1 program pay for all tuition and the cost of educating a child. So there's no economic reason to not do so. My niece is doing well at Mercy High School in Burlingame. She's got an A- in English and then A's kind of across the board otherwise. So I think she would fit in well here. The community seems to be very open, but as well as have traditional values. We were actually surprised when we first came to Kalispell how many pride flags, for example, are flying in some of the neighborhoods. And my wife, being Chinese, we were a little bit concerned potentially because it was at the very beginning of COVID, there was certain xenophobic kind of issues nationwide, but she's had only great experiences here in Kalispell. My kids have written essays they go to Hedges, and they've written essays about how great Kalispell is, and they would want to graduate from high school here or something. probably running up against my time limit, but I really would urge you to reconsider your policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have personnel action items.
Yep, in front of the board is our bi-monthly list of hires, resignations, terminations across a variety of positions. You'll see that there's thankfully a group of substitute teachers that we're recommending for hire. Always glad to see that. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions? Rebecca?
No, I was gonna move to, accept the, personnel action items as presented.
Thank you,
Sorry, I'm not
Rebecca.
ready for that
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Heather. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Seeing none, any other deliberations by the board? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the personnel action items, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed unanimously. I know, I forgot.
Hi, Scott.
Sorry, Scott.
It's all good. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, glad you're here. Next up, comp time MOA with KEA.
Yep. Oh, turn on my microphone. So the Kalispell Education Association and the district are seeking to modify language around compensatory time in their collective bargaining agreement due to a substitute shortage. This is something that we have had in the CBA for probably the last, well, we've had the MOA the last 2 years, but the compensatory time has been in there for probably 8 years. And so this is just to modify the language around how much they can accrue and in what ways and for what purpose. And so the first year that we did it, I think we were paying $25 an hour in comp time, and it was payable as wages. It was not something where you could accrue because comp time, it becomes a cyclical problem for us. If I accrue comp time, then I want to take time off, and then we don't have people to cover for the people who are taking comp time. Yep. So, and really it's been beneficial to us as a district in the long haul for keeping our doors open and addressing that substitute shortage. So and when I say we, the leadership from KEA along with school administrators have met, discussed, talked about this, also presented this at Finance and at Personnel Committee. And we'll stand for questions.
So we made some modifications to how comp was dealt with the last couple of years. So this is bringing our overall policy more in line with what we did the last couple of years, or is this a whole new?
It's essentially the same. One of the things that we did, and one of the things that's always hard when it comes to language in collective bargaining agreements and memorandums of agreement or understanding, is understanding the intent behind the language. And so we worked really hard to try and make sure that we clarified what the intent was. In this particular situation, one of the things that we looked at and agreed to was on line, I think it's 11, well, 10 and 11. Compensatory time is earned when there is a change in the certified staff member's daily assignment to cover a vacancy in their building. In the past, we had it to cover a certified vacancy, but we quickly ran into some challenges where, say at an elementary school, you're short a substitute teacher for 5th grade. And so what you're doing is you're picking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teachers to cover for that one teacher, as opposed to saying, we're going to place a paraprofessional in there all day, which we could do, And then that leaves the teachers available to cover for other things like maybe a reading group or a math intervention, or even potentially a recess or some other monitoring that maybe the para would have otherwise been doing. So it's a balance between what is best for the students in that situation, to have 7 different individuals floating in and out of the classroom, or is it better to just, let's place one person in there and then try and cover some of those other areas as needed. And then the other piece on this, one of the challenges that we had is sometimes you have staff members who, as an example, are getting married. And so they want to earn comp time so that they can have a honeymoon attached to a break. And then we say, sorry, you can't use that time. And we want to have a little bit of flexibility to be able to say, we appreciate that you're getting married and that you work for us, and we want you to come back. And we're going to allow for those kind of exceptions.
Other questions? Anybody comfortable making the motion?
So I'd move to approve the memorandum of agreement.
Thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Will. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, any further deliberations? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Been approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Next up, special education personnel request. Sarah?
Hi, everybody. Okay, got this. I have to say, because Trig and Michelle are still here, I've had personal connections with 2 of the folks that had Ivy, and not only was at Special Olympics, but she emceed the whole event. She was pretty spectacular, and she's considering becoming a special ed teacher in Boulder, which makes me super excited. We are recruiting kids to fill our special ed needs. And then Trig's 2 staff members who presented tonight on the biomimicry. My son Daniel was one of the 19 kids last year that got to participate. And from a parent perspective, like, you couldn't be more proud to see your child truly engage in something that is transformational and does kind of transcend the typical classroom setting. So big shout out to you guys as leaders in your schools. And I'll take less time on this request since I took time on the mic for that. So this request was vetted through both personnel and finance. We're requesting 3 additional life skills paras. I'm going to try not to make eye contact with Lance because there's kind of a running joke about requesting paras paid for out of tuition. The trend, though, with our numbers continues. So Kyra's still working on October count, but our special ed numbers over the last 2 years have just grown pretty significantly and in different ways than in previous years. Specifically at Hedges in the life skills classroom, we anticipated 25 students to start the school year, and we are now up to 33 students. And so when you're talking about kids with pretty intensive needs who usually require often constant supervision and individualized support, we made the request for 1 additional paraeducator per classroom. So there's 3 life skills classrooms at Hedges. The other thing that we did at both the committee meetings was just review some data on financial kind of stability for this request, and then also just what we're looking for when we make these types of requests. If you want more information, our Special Services Board Committee is going to take a deep dive into programs and then just the funding for special education at our next meeting, which is on December 7th. This would not impact the general fund. It would be paid for out of Medicaid Direct first year, and then the most sustainable place after that would be tuition. Any questions?
So we keep having an increase in the students to this program. Is that because our general student population is growing? Is it still proportional?
That, you know, it's actually, I took my phone out to just do a quick calculation based on the numbers that we know in terms of enrollment increases and how that compares to special ed. And Kyra is literally in the midst of finishing up the special ed numbers for October count, so I'll be able to get you that data really, really soon. My preliminary check on that is that we're growing disproportionate to the regular population. And based on what I'm seeing, our numbers are growing more rapidly in proportion to the regular population.
Would that indicate that there's some kids out there who weren't in any kind of a program, but now we have space for them, so they're coming in?
You know, it's kind of a variation, but I would say the biggest group that we've seen grow are students transferring in. So it's like, especially in a life skills setting, these are kids who they would not have fallen through the cracks if they were our kids. They would have started in our developmental preschool program most likely. So the influx is mostly transfer students from what I'm seeing. Anything else?
Thank you, Sarah.
As always, do you see a problem, finding 3 paras, or you think we're good on hiring?
You know, it's taken a long time, like the middle school is one example. We had life skills and aspire para positions and actually just resource positions, and slowly trickled in over the course of a few months. Trig's team was able to fill those positions. So I anticipate being able to fill them. I just think it'll probably take time.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
So I move to approve life skills personal request as presented. Oh, jeez, I'm not sure why I saw that right at the end.
Okay, I'll do it. I move to approve the life skills personal request as presented.
Thank you, Ursula. Is there a second from an elementary trustee?
So move, Sue.
Thank you, Lance.
So,
Been
second.
moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, elementary trustees in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you guys very much.
Next up in business, large purchases, the STEM lab replacements.
I'm gonna have Jason, speak to this, but before he does, I wanna point out that there are 2 motions, to this. There is sort of a commingling of funds, because we get better pricing by doing bulk orders. But there is a motion for the KMS, so elementary only, and then Glacier and Flathead would be separate.
Oh, good question. This is gonna replace, the STEM labs, one at Glacier, one at Flathead, one at is becoming a page, and the software is becoming more advanced, and then we're also a couple lab replacement monitors for Glacier.
Jason, how old is the hardware?
It varies. I think KMS's is probably 7 years old, if I was to guess. Glacier is probably 6, and then Flathead has been piecemeal.
Jack?
So, Mike, you were talking about 2 motions or 3 motions?
2.
Probably 3.
One to commingle.
Elementary, high school, and then approval for expenditure from the interlocal agreement. What would that dollar amount be approximately?
I don't know the answer to that question, Jack.
This interlocal was previously, voted on.
No, that's right. So the replacement of the KMS STEM lab was part of the, funding request that we made in June.
Right, and so will money come out of the interlocal agreement for the high school?
No, that's coming out of Perkins and some other miscellaneous grants.
Okay. Thank you.
And this large purchase is also under the, Rfqs, so we don't have to go.
Will?
Hey, Jason, I noticed that there's no Microsoft Office in these, boxes. What are the students using for an office?
Actually been grandfathered in under my offering this, able to get underneath the.
Also, I noticed that the delivery date is passed. We already have this stuff.
This quote has been modified over the last several weeks. To monitor labs.
Is the arrival date on this page somewhere, or that was just?
No, I think the arrival date on that.
Okay.
We do have parts, we've talked to the, sales manager, they have everything ready to go back from Dell. All brand new, 5-year plus warranty. About half the cost.
Wow.
What is the replacement gonna look like? Will that be a week or, using the lab?
Transition of each lab.
Yeah.
We'll probably take it one at a time, each of our buildings. Matters is re-imaging. I would say if it was me, I could probably have that lab done in before and after.
How long do you estimate this equipment lasting? I mean, if the other stuff, you have 7-year-old equipment, 6-year-old equipment, and then it lasts 4 or 5 years?
We're ballparking it on the 5 to 7 year.
I guess this isn't really a question to you, but I'm not sure, how STEM are these STEM labs? I mean, this is presumably just computers for these. How, what courses use these labs? I really don't know much about how our STEM labs work in those 3 schools. But it's probably not something you know either, or maybe you do.
I know a little bit, so the flathead side, part of that grant is gonna be for, which is pretty, areas depending on the curriculum. Briefly, just look, actually overclock these.
Jack, do you have another question, or did you just leave your mic on? Thank you.
Forget it.
Ours is the engineering, design and modeling lab.
Okay.
Our engineering program.
Now we know you have 2 3D printers.
Can't wait for the tour. Any other questions? Let's do the elementary, or the middle school purchase first. So is there an elementary trustee who would like to make a motion?
I'd move to approve the replacement of the KMS STEM lab.
Thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Seeing none, elementary trustees in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Next, we will do the high school. Anybody want to make a motion? Thank you, Lloyd. Is there a second? Thank you, Heather. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously.
And then do you need one for the interlocal, like that?
Nope,
We
we
don't.
had already approved that
Oh, that's
expenditure.
right, you did that, okay.
Okay, policy updates. Third and final reading on policies 2510 and 5333.
Yeah, so policy 2510 was dealing with some additional language around Montana health enhancement standards. And so this has been the third time that this has been in front of the board. And then we also had policy 5333, which was meant to bring language in policy to reflect what the Montana Code annotated actually said. So, yeah. Any questions on those?
Any questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
I move to approve the two policies listed herein as presented.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Will. Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed unanimously. Next policy update. This is the second reading, so we will not be voting on this one, 7510.
Yep, and this was one that came from Denise and her recommendation based off of our auditor's findings on how we list and classify fixed assets. And the valuation was set at $5,000, so you get a pretty lengthy list of assets, and we report and record those. And we are asking that the board move that dollar amount to $25,000 for the future.
Any
Denise,
questions?
Denise will answer your questions.
Just thank you so much for Denise for finding this and allowing us to streamline, because it really was crazy that it was there for us.
Okay, so this will be on the next agenda, next meeting. Okay, the next one, policy update. This is first reading. Are you going to take this one, Micah?
Yep. All right, so this is policy 2335, which is a health enhancement policy, and this is an update that is based off of a recent legislative change, House Bill 99, where the state legislature defined what is considered to be human sexuality and any instruction related to that, and said that by law, school districts must give parents annual notice of the teaching of any form of human sexuality, and that in addition to that, teachers, staff are required to give 48 hours notice regarding any human sexuality instruction. And typically, board policy dictates that we go through 3 readings, but that also policy 1310 says that in the event that you come across a policy adoption that is actually required by law, you can make that adoption in 1 reading. And so even if the board said, you know what, we're not adopting this policy at all, we have to follow the law. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us. It would stand for questions.
Micah, this is a new policy and the law that stems from. There's a lot of vague territory. You know, I did hear some concern from counselors that what happens if a student comes to them? What are they to do? Are they to send them, and, you know, about maybe their gender identity or sexuality?
Yeah, and I think that gets into the discussion about whether or not you were teaching or having a conversation with a student that brought up a concern. And so it doesn't necessarily fall under the law of we have to give that 48-hour notice and or that annual notification. Yep. And I would just add to that, we have had a lot of what-if questions. And if I don't know the answer to them, I send it to our legal counsel and say, what if? And they say, here's what it means. You either have to do that or you don't. And so we've been giving very clear guidance to our building administrators who are then conveying that message back to our staff on those types of questions.
Will?
Hey, Micah? It looks like this will cause an increase in forms and filling things out and sending stuff. Any idea what kind of impact it will have for our office staff?
Well, I mean, not just office staff, but I think our instructional staff. You know, and when you know, so the questions that kind of what if questions come up, if someone's teaching psychology and they're reading a obscure passage about human development and how it affects the psychological development of a child, and they reference testes and ovaries, the teacher's required to give 48-hour notice because it's in there. So every single content area that has anything to do with, and it could be in literature, it could be your health class, it could be anatomy and physiology, you know, any time that it comes up, it's a huge burden.
So what does notice mean? You're going to send out email to the parents, or?
Yeah, so there were a couple of forms that are included in here. We did not specifically ask that those be adopted based on the recommendation of the policy committee and administration. They're pretty verbose, but we are working on what those communications look like to our families and parents.
Do you have anything else that requires this kind of follow-up?
No, there's other things that we're required, you know, obviously say the Pledge of Allegiance, have a flag displayed, have access to the Constitution in your classroom, you know, those kind of things that are requirements by law. But this one's burdensome for us. Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
You know, when I first saw this policy, I thought it didn't, you know, because the change looked so little, I didn't realize how big a change it was, because this is similar to what the middle school has been doing in its health education, but the major change is now, as well as beginning of the year notification, we also give this 48-hour notice, and it's more broadly applied to things other than health.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, middle school and high school, we've always provided notice, you know, especially around sex education, things like that, but this has a much broader definition. And so we're living with it.
Well,
Micah, so this seems pretty kind of squirrely. It'll put us in legal jeopardy. Do we have to have insurance for this? Is there a policeman that comes to your office? What's the deal?
Well, interestingly, this is kind of playing out in Montana and some other communities right now. You know, worst case scenario, you know, parents could be asking Office of Public Instruction to revoke teacher licenses based off of this. You know, and it creates a certain amount of fear and, like, you know, I've taught this book forever. I didn't even think about it, you know, mentioning those words, and is some parent gonna, you know, come after me and, you know, or after my license or whatever it may be. Right now, I think that's going to be part of the legal challenge in all of this. So we're just trying to be cautious and upfront and encouraging our staff if in doubt, send it out. Like, just send out the notice. And what that's doing is that's telling parents, like, this is something that could come up. You are more than welcome to come and inspect the curriculum anytime, which they've always been allowed to do. And it's just an extra step.
Does the union have any involvement in this, since teachers are put at risk like that?
Not that I have heard at this point, but I think the challenge would be, you know, for the school district to defend the teacher.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Thank you for your morality, Micah. It's really nice to know that you remember to say that our job is to protect the teachers. I mean, I know it's obvious to you, but it's really important, and I'm glad that you're always really clear-headed about it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm always very appreciative that we have robust discussions, not only here, but in our committee meetings. I mean, in the committees, we did have a good discussion. You know how much I love that policy committee. It was a very good discussion. We even had some public comments, so.
Question. So, when I looked at the information, it did say completing, signing, and submitting, it had written notice, so we could submit, parents could also submit emailed notice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Anyone comfortable making the motion?
For policy 1310, I move to approve the policy 2335 on first reading.
Thank you, Lance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Will. Been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Lynn?
Is this an opt-out or an opt-in type of letter going out?
It's opt-out.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I see no other public comment. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Next up is our consent agenda. Elementary first. Everybody had a chance to look at this. These are pretty routine approvals. Tuition. Any questions?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second? Elementary trustee.
Second.
Thank you, Lance. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? All in favor, elementary trustees only, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed unanimously. Next up is district-wide consent agenda. Any questions? Again, pretty routine. Anybody care to make a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda district-wide.
Thank you, Heather. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lloyd. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Next up, information items and reports. We're on trustee reports. We'll start with Heather at that end.
Last week, I was able to go and help serve lunch to the Flathead teachers here at Flathead. It was great to see a bunch of the teachers and just see how appreciative they were of the potato bar is what we served that day. Today, we had a great visit over at Edgerton, and that's always a fun time over at that school. So inviting, so fun. Kindergartners come out of their rooms, give you a big hug.
Those of us that were there all got a hug, and it was just a great visit. Are we giving an update on our committees this round, last round? We did have, a personnel committee meeting. We touched on most of that tonight. You guys all heard about that. You didn't miss out on much, other than, we just had one, informative item that Greg shared about, just clarifying the coverage of one of our mechanics and his tools. But other than that, you guys heard about everything that we discussed here tonight. And I have on my calendar that I'll be attending a school board meeting with Fairmont Egan, one of our partner schools, next Monday night, if anybody would like to come and attend. All I have.
Thank you, Heather. Will?
So I was also at Edgerton today, and one of the things that really struck me was all the art that's all through Edgerton. I asked about it, and there's a art docent that volunteers with the students. It's all pretty much student-made art, and it's beautiful to see it. It's good.
Thank you, Will. Lloyd?
First off, I'd like to start, I'm on the Special Services Committee, and I've asked Sarah to give me a success and a challenge for each board meeting that I come to. And she touched on some of this early, her social services rock star over there. But she talked about the basketball tournament at Flat High School that had students from elementary, middle, and high schools alongside teams from across the county. It was awesome to see these kids have a sense of pride and belonging. And then the challenge, she talked about needing some additional paras, but also that one of the challenges going forward is finding creative ways to keep pace and provide meaningful and specialized instruction. And that she does support, the support from the board in meeting the staff needs has been greatly appreciated. I also attended a couple of sports events, going to the cross-country tomorrow, and the high school games have been pretty awesome. There were some injuries which were a little scary, but they all wound up okay. One of them had, there were concerns, it was just precautionary, they took them to the hospital, but it's just fine. And at the games, it's so much fun to see the student sections get so amped up over their team and the back and forth. It's just a whole lot of fun. And then I also try to, when I'm out and about and I see a high school student, just one or two a week, I try to ask them, what the best thing is and the worst thing is about the school that they're attending. And this week I spoke with Ava Titus, who goes to Glacier, and she's a freshman this year. She's a new student from out of state. And I asked her what the best and worst things were about school. And she said the best thing at Glacier was how welcoming everybody was, and the worst, there was none. So I thought those were awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Jack?
Nothing.
Lance?
I'll be brief. The policy committee, I think we touched on everything. It was just more expanded during the committee. Other than that, no report.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Speaking of student achievement, I hear our choir is singing right now, and I sort of wish we could open the doors and have a little more enjoyment of it, but it's good to see students involved in things, which I do think is, as I said, it's not just grades, it's also. And you also touched on at the beginning, the things that people have been bringing to the board, and one that's been rattling around my head, especially as we're talking about having all of the handbooks be more similar to each other, was the person who came and said at the middle school, to stay in activities, they look at your weekly grades, and at the high school, they look at it semester. And that's been really rattling around in my head, the idea that if there's nothing you can do to change, if you say, get your grades up this week or you can't be at the game next week, a student has the ability to change that. If you failed last semester, it feels punitive to me, and I think that's something we should think about, or I guess Michelle. But yeah, it's just been rattling around my head. That's right.
I am.
I've loved all the coverage in the press, in the papers. recently. It's great to read about accomplishments and achievements of the, well, the kids, but also administrators and staff and teachers. That's great, and I think it's good to get that information out to our voters as well.
Thanks for that, Hillary.
Thank you.
My report is that I am really struggling to find days for our boardsmanship training. I think we will have to push it off until after Thanksgiving. Just everybody's schedule is really tight right now. Not that it will be any better later, but we're still working on that, okay? Because I think it's an important thing for us all to do. Administrative reports. We start with Denise.
Just have a short report. Our business office staff is going to be testing an upgrade of our e-finance system here pretty soon. I guess we're waiting for a checklist from e-finance, but we did get the link so that we can go in and doing some obvious, tasks. And then after that testing of the upgrade, then we'll go live. And then after that, the part that I'm really excited about is the business process review that we'll be doing with e-finance, because I have lots of questions about how to get information out of the system, how to create reports, things like that. So that's what's going on with me.
Thank you, Denise. Pete.
So I'm just listening and learning. I don't have anything.
Thanks, Pete. Matt?
Report.
Thanks. Micah?
I got a report. Couple of things, just to update the board. So, I don't know if you noticed in the last, board meeting, but we had a pretty significant resignation, which is Sissy Klein, who, her title was kind of this ESSA coordinator person, but she is critical to the operations of our district when it comes to all title programming, federal funds. She does a lot of bureaucratic stuff for me personally, and so we have her position posted, and we'll be looking at screening and interviewing. Our hope is to bring someone on board mid-November that can be with her, because she is retiring December 30th. And so we want to get someone in and trained and onboarded for that. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. Also, at the beginning of the school year, I invited Deputy Superintendent of Instruction from the Office of Public Instruction, Alan, to come to Kalispell and visit and have conversations with myself, our administrative team, so that we could showcase a little bit about what we've been working on in Kalispell Public Schools around transformational learning, work-based learning, advanced opportunities. I'm pretty excited and proud of the things that are happening here, and want to be able to share that with people at the top of that agency and showcase that. So we're excited for her to come in.
When is she going to be here?
Friday.
Okay.
Tomorrow, we're reviewing the RFQs for the long-range facility planning, so also excited about that. Thank you for the trustees who are doing that. Greg and I had a meeting with fire department, which included the fire chief and 5 inspectors the other day, and overall a productive conversation. But there are some things that have been challenges for us, and we're just continuing to work on that. But I would let you know that. And then last but not least, working on planning a legislative meet and greet, looking around the November 30th date, but also working with our partner districts and encouraging partner boards to also come and be a part of that. So we're looking for a location that was maybe off-site, and it may be at one of the other districts. We just didn't want to feel like this was all just a Kalispell Public Schools thing. So we're being very encouraging to those administrators and superintendents and trustees from the outlying districts as well, so that we can share some of the successes in Flathead Valley, but also talk about some of our concerns in the upcoming legislative session. That's all we're doing.
Great.
Can I ask Mike a question?
Yeah.
So, student count is early October. Do you have any preliminary numbers about growth?
Yes. Right now, we're showing that we're down 17 students at the elementary, which I'm gonna couch that in the fact that we don't have as many kindergartners and early kindergartners as we've had in years previous. If you were looking at just K through 5, we'd be down 6, but if you don't have a large incoming kindergarten class, that can skew that a little bit. We're down 24 students at the middle school from year previous, but again, it's a little bit skewed. The numbers are actually really similar when you look at, from one year to the next. So you look at your fall count in 2021, and then you look at your fall count in 2022, and those numbers are paralleling and tracking really well. And then we're up 72 students at the high school level. So another pretty significant increase there. What?
Might have one thing.
Yeah.
When we presented, we were looking at the elementary level, originally we were looking at about plus 60 some, and then we're down 17, so it's a pretty big swing to be off. One of the things we're gonna dig into is the mobility rate. So we were registering a bunch of students from our district or students new to us, but what we weren't accounting for is how many students left. So I don't know what the history has been here in Kalispell Public Schools, last decade or so, but this seems like a shift in the amount of new students in and the amount of old students out.
Just kind of emphasize that. Matt, would you go back to the consent agenda on the elementary only and pull up that document? This is a list of students that we're approving to attend out of district. So these are students that are zoned for Kalispell Public Schools. Pretty significant list. A lot of them go into Whitefish, and could be for a variety of reasons. Parents work up there, it's easier. Could be that, yeah, anyway, but I mean, you look at that list and say, wow, okay, so we have quite a few kids who are exiting the district, and this isn't the first list that we presented. So those swings that Matt's talking about in that mobility, that's one of the things that we really want to try and take a look at, because I think long-term, and even as we look at the long-range facility plan, forecasting is going to be a really important part of that in trying to determine what next steps could be for our district, so.
Micah?
Yeah.
I was wondering about this list, because we see something like this every few meetings, but it's not the same students. Every list is a different group of students, and it's for a year. So these guys right here we're approving them for the next year.
This school year.
This school year.
This school year, yep.
And if we get another list, it's because they came in late or something like that.
It's, so we would send a list, the list goes to different districts, and then they have to sign for registering those students coming in. It's kind of this permission back and forth, so usually they come in blocked by district.
Wow.
So the Whitefish School District processed all of their incoming students from out of district, and they signed off on accepting those students, and they send it back to us, and we formalize that list, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But we should be towards the end of it, because it doesn't go much longer than typically.
And keeping in mind, Whitefish does the exact same thing. They approve a group of students who are coming to Kalispell.
But we don't look at the ones that are going away. We're looking at the ones that go away, but we don't look at the ones that come in.
Correct.
Diane?
Yeah, I had a question about those students. Do we track or the reasons for transfers? Why they're transferring to other schools? Is that a question that's asked?
No. And so, I guess on an individual student basis, if they're in the office, but some of these students are students that we had, well, a couple things. First off, I'm assuming that some of these students are students that are new to our area, and they're occupying a new house in an area that's on a cutoff close to a boundary line, like Silverbrook is an area where when we have families registering, they actually live in the Whitehurst School District, but the neighbor right across the street goes to Kalispell. So there's lots of areas like that. But then also some of these might be students that we had on our enrollment and we had them like ready to go. We thought they were going to be here and that's why our numbers get off. And then they don't show up. And so we don't know what happened to that student until we get transfer request papers from another district or even from a different state. That communication when students leave is not very good.
I remember Mark Littell used to say, we don't know the students until we see the whites of their eyes.
Very accurate, yep.
Thank you. Next up is our Safe Return to Schools and Continuity of Service Plan. Micah?
Holding steady.
Good to hear.
Micah, how has the COVID been treating staff and students?
You know, I haven't heard a lot. I know there have been a couple of staff members, but by and large, I have not seen a lot of impact on that. There's no requirements for reporting from the district to anybody. It's pretty much if you follow the CDC guidelines and the county health department guidelines right now, it's if you test positive, stay home for 5 days, and then return to normal activity.
Okay, next up on the agenda is our second public comment time. The time for comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Is anybody here to make public comment at this time?
Want to talk on audio?
Sure. And yeah, if you can bring it over to the microphone or make it loud enough. I don't. Is she in China?
She is in Courtney. She's actually,
Ooh.
very sensitive. Okay. She's actually in quarantine now because at her 20,000 people work site, one tested positive for COVID, so they all have to stay at work for 2 weeks. Can't go home.
Wow. Yes.
She was expecting to do it, but it's okay. Come on. Let me try one more. Oh. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Maybe.
One of the challenges is this room is tough to get cellular reception in.
She's able to text, but I think it's probably not working. But, maybe another time. I appreciate
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
consideration.
this would be rather unusual for us to do this, but I think this is such a unique situation that it, you know, I would like to hear from her, so.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So thank you for, and for hanging out for the whole meeting. Okay, as chair of the board, I have determined that the next item on the agenda involve matters of individual privacy that could clearly exceed the merits of public disclosure, and therefore, I am closing the meeting in accordance with Montana law. At this time, I am requesting that all individuals exit the room with the exception of Superintendent Hill, Principal Johnson, and the elementary trustees. Let's take a 5-minute break to clear the room, and then we will return and finish up.